The baby wouldn't stop crying. It wasn't the soft kind of cry that made people turn with pity. It was raw, throat-burning, desperate, echoing down the crowded terminal of Seattle-Tacoma Airport like a quiet scream no one cared to hear. Sophia Bennett's arms trembled beneath Emma's weight, but she kept bouncing, whispering small prayers between her cracked lips. It had been 36 hours since she last slept. Her body had forgotten what steady breathing felt like. "Shh, it's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, though nothing was okay. Not the one-way ticket clutched between her fingers. Not the growing knot of fear tightening in her chest. And definitely not the name Marcus Thornwood, the alpha who had already decided she belonged to him. Gate 22 was packed with families flying home for Thanksgiving. Smiles, coffee, rolling luggage, the illusion of warmth. But all she saw were exits, cameras, shadows. A pair of guards walked past and her pulse skipped a beat. It wasn't them she feared. It was being found. She held the boarding pass like a weapon. Denver, a new city, a new name, a chance. When the boarding call echoed overhead, something inside her steadied. It wasn't courage. It was desperation dressed in thin skin. She lifted Emma's stroller, stepped into line, and told herself she wasn't a runaway. She was a mother. She hadn't noticed him until he spoke. "Long day?" His voice was smooth, calm, dangerous in the way silk can strangle. She turned and for the first time saw him. The man standing behind her. Tall, sharp suit, gray eyes that didn't belong in crowded airports. He didn't look tired. He looked like the kind of man who didn't need permission to breathe. Sophia forced a polite smile and turned back. She didn't talk to strangers, especially not strangers like that. But strangers had a way of not asking permission either. The cabin was half empty when she reached her seat. She'd chosen a window near the back, away from curious eyes. She tried to breathe, tried to believe she could disappear between cities. That's when the footsteps came down the aisle. The man from the line slid into the seat right beside her, ignoring the 2 empty rows around them. She stiffened. "Don't worry," he said, his voice low, smooth. "I don't snore." Emma's cry broke through the stale cabin air. The man didn't flinch. He pulled out a small black leather notebook, opened it to a blank page, and handed it to the baby like it was the most natural thing in the world. For some reason, Emma stopped crying. Just like that. Sophia blinked. That had never happened before. Not once. Emma's tiny fingers dragged across the leather as if she knew it. "How did you—" "Some things don't need explaining," he said. She wanted to move. She didn't. Something about him rooted her in place. He didn't look at her like other men did. There was no hunger, no judgment, just a steady weight, like he'd already decided something she didn't know about yet. The plane took off. The rumble beneath her feet drowned out her heartbeat. Emma drifted to sleep with the notebook pressed to her chest. And then, somehow, so did Sophia. Her head fell against his shoulder. She didn't fight it. Couldn't. She felt the solid warmth of him, the steadiness of someone who wasn't afraid. His breathing didn't change, but his hand curled into a fist in his lap. The control in every line of his jaw too precise to be casual. Under his breath, so quiet she almost didn't hear it, he whispered, "Found you." The world blurred around her. When she opened her eyes again, the light was different. Softer. Warm. She blinked against the morning sun slicing through the airplane window. The flight attendant's voice filtered through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Portland." Her stomach turned to stone. Portland? She sat up fast, heart hammering. The seatbelt light flicked off. Outside the window, mist hovered over a city she wasn't supposed to see. A city that wasn't Denver. Beside her, the stranger, this man with quiet storms for eyes, was already unbuckling his belt. Calm, confident, like everything had gone according to plan. She swallowed hard. "Portland? think there's been a mistake." He looked at her then, and it felt like a door closing. No mistake. The way he said it wasn't a threat. It wasn't kind either. It was final. The rest of the plane emptied around them, but Sophia's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The world was spinning too fast, and somehow she realized something chilling. She hadn't just sat next to a stranger. She had sat next to someone who'd been waiting for her, and Portland was never an accident. Rain made a curtain of the jet bridge, a gray shimmer that swallowed the world beyond the airport glass. He didn't offer his name. He offered his hand instead, steady, palm up, like a promise she hadn't earned and didn't want. Sophia ignored it and gathered Emma, who woke with a soft hiccup and clutched the black leather notebook like a lifeline. They stepped into Portland air that smelled like wet asphalt and cedar. The man walked as if the crowd parted for him, which it did. People saw the suit, the certainty, the way he never looked where he was going, because everything moved around him. He wasn't loud. Power never is. Outside, a black SUV eased to the curb with the silence of a predator. The driver hopped out and opened the door. Mr. Cross. The name slid over Sophia's skin. Cross. It fit like a warning. She hesitated on the curb. If she ran now, she'd last a block. Maybe 2. The baby made sure of that. The fear made sure of the rest. She tightened the blanket around Emma and climbed in. Inside, the car smelled like leather and rain. The city moved past in soft, low buildings and wet trees. On the center console, a small screen showed a news anchor with a practiced frown. Developing story from Seattle. A missing Omega, Sophia Bennett, last seen leaving the Thornwood Pack compound 2 nights ago. Alpha Marcus Thornwood is asking for the public's help to bring Sophia and a 9-month-old child home safely. She's ill. She's confused. He says he's worried she might harm herself or the child. The driver turned down the volume. It didn't matter. The words were already echoing. Sophia found herself sitting straighter. "That's a lie." "I know," the man beside her said. She stared at him. "You know my name." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The SUV slid into an underground garage, lights striping the concrete like bars. Elevator doors opened without anyone touching a button. The sort of building that recognized your weight, your pulse, your place in its hierarchy. "Where are we?" she asked. "Somewhere no one can reach you," he said. Then, softer, like he was trying the word on his tongue. "Yet." The elevator rose without a sound, up past the parts of the city where people argue over coffee and roofs leak in winter. Up past anything that sounded like ordinary life. When the doors opened, the air changed. Warmer, quieter, scented with eucalyptus and soap. A penthouse shouldn't feel like a promise. This one did. Floor-to-ceiling windows stared out at a river crawling under bridges. On a table, a bowl held nothing but green pears. There were no family photos. No clutter. As if the place were a stage waiting for the actors to arrive. Emma fussed. The man took off his suit jacket and set it over the back of a chair, movements so controlled they were almost ceremonial. "She's hungry," Sophia bristled. "I know what my child needs." He met that flash of fire with something like respect. Good. He led her down a hallway whose doors were all closed. At the end, he pressed his palm to a panel. Something metallic clicked. A lift unfurled out of the floor, sleek and industrial, descending into darkness. "Absolutely not," Sophia breathed. "You're safe here," he said. "But safety is a corridor, not a room." He stepped into the lift and pressed a second panel. "Come." She didn't trust him. She trusted the truth humming in the base of her skull, the same instrument that told her when a voice carried poison and when it carried pain. She stepped onto the platform with Emma tucked under her chin, her heartbeat a little drum. The lower level opened like a hidden city. Soft white walls, murals of forests and sky. Hallways warmed by lamps that pretended to be sunlight. Laughter floated from somewhere, small and nervous, like birds learning their wings. Women turned their heads as Sophia passed, one with a scar mapping her jaw, one with a crown of braids and eyes that didn't miss anything, one holding a toddler who watched the newcomer with solemn focus. The air felt elastic, stretched between relief and vigilance. "Sanctuary," he said as if introducing a person. "You're not a prisoner. You're a guest." Guests don't arrive through hidden doors, she thought. Guests don't have their names on the evening news. A woman stepped forward with a staff lanyard and warm, competent hands. "I'm Elena. You can breathe now." Sophia tried. The breath snagged. Elena guided her to a small room with a crib and a rocking chair and a stack of blankets folded like origami. Sophia lowered Emma into her arms to feed. The baby latched, sighing in that tiny, holy way babies do when the world narrows down to warmth and enough. "Can I speak to you alone?" Sophia asked without looking up. Elena glanced toward the man. He nodded and stepped back into the hall. The door shut with a soft hush. Elena's voice was a lantern. "You're not the first to come here shaking, but you'll stop. I promise." "Promises are easy." Sophia's voice had splinters in it. "Keeping them is expensive." Elena's smile didn't dim. "Then it's good he's rich." Sophia stared at the door. "Who is he?" "Jackson Cross," Elena said. "He keeps this place open. He keeps the wolves from the door." Sophia gave a short, humorless sound. "He is a wolf." "Maybe," Elena said, "but he's housebroken." When Elena left, Jackson returned as if he'd been leaning against the hallway, counting her breaths through the wood. He stood far enough away to pretend he didn't want to touch the baby, close enough that Emma reached for him anyway. The child cooed, gummy grin bright, the black notebook clutched in one fist. "How does she know you?" Sophia asked. His mouth tightened. "She doesn't." Liar, her bones hummed. Not the word itself, she knew he believed what he said. But belief isn't the same as truth. There was something under the words, something that smelled like ache. "Denver wasn't safe," he said, voice low. "You were walking into a sale." Her throat closed. "I heard him, Marcus, on the phone. Collector." I thought he meant she didn't finish. She didn't have to. She'd pictured a man with a ring of keys and a laugh that didn't have a bottom. Jackson's eyes flicked to Emma, then back. "Denver is a distribution point. We've been mapping routes for 2 years. Your file crossed my desk 3 weeks ago." "My file?" "Security footage, pack chatter, a woman at Pike Place Market who never looked anyone in the eye." A softer note then. "Except once," she remembered. A brushed shoulder near a fish stall, a flash of cedar in the air, a steady presence that made her want to lean. She'd yanked herself away like she was saving her own life. Maybe she had been. Sophia adjusted Emma, every instinct bristling. "You rerouted a plane." "I rerouted you. And you didn't ask." "I didn't have time to ask." The words landed like a door slamming, then softened. "If you'd landed in Denver, you'd be gone." She let the truth wash through her. It struck clear. It left silt. "You've been hunting them." She lifted her chin. "Or me." His silence admitted more than any sentence could. When he finally spoke, there was something raw under the steel. "I'm hunting the men who made a map out of girls' lives." Her gift, the strange faculty that had always made her a bad liar and an excellent survivor, tested it. His grief rang true. His fury rang truer. "Why?" she asked almost gently. He didn't answer. He walked to the window that wasn't a window, just a long, bright screen washed with meadow light, and stood as if making himself small in a room he owned. "We'll get you papers. Marcus can't claim a ghost." "Marcus will come anyway." She rocked the baby. "He likes to call theft rescue. He likes to wear words like masks." Jackson's gaze sharpened. "He won't get through my doors." He believed that, too. She nodded as if belief were a shield you could raise against a monster who knew your scent. Emma finished and drifted off, milk-drunk and heavy. Sophia laid her in the crib and stood, every part of her pretending it wasn't shaking. When she faced him, he didn't move. Neither did she. There was a line between them drawn in quiet. "I'm going to earn your trust," he said. "You can't buy it?" Her tone was dry enough to crack. Something like a smile touched his mouth and didn't last. "I've tried. It doesn't stick." Sophia pressed her palm to the inside of her wrist, where her pulse lived. "I don't want to be grateful," she said softly. "Grateful people forget to look for the trap." His eyes softened to pewter. "Then don't be grateful. Be alert. Stay." The room's low lights hummed. A child laughed down the hall. Far above them, the city dragged the gray day forward like a tired animal. Sophia opened her mouth to say the thing she'd been circling since the airport. "You moved me like a piece on a board. I'm not your piece," when a tone sliced the quiet in two. A chime. Sharp. Then a second. Then a third. Jackson's head snapped toward the ceiling. The meadow wall dissolved into black. Security feeds bloomed, a lobby, an elevator bank, a street-level camera beaded with rain. Men in dark coats filled the frame, shoulders squared, eyes flat. Another angle showed a hand pressed to the glass, spreading like a stain. "Enforcers," Jackson said, voice gone to iron. "Thornwoods." The alarms didn't wail. They pulsed low, a heartbeat in the bones. Doors along the corridor clicked shut. Lights shifted, warmer in the children's rooms, colder in the halls. He looked at Sophia, all the careful distance gone. "Stay here. Don't open for anyone who isn't Elena or me." She didn't ask how they'd found her. She didn't have to. Men like Marcus always knew where the fear in a woman's body would drive her next. Emma stirred. The feeds showed a palm slapping the lobby glass again, then sliding down, leaving water and something darker. Jackson reached the door, then paused, as if he'd left words behind and remembered them. He turned, eyes blazing in the quiet. "You're not prey anymore." The door sealed. The room held its breath. And above, the wolves came. The first sound wasn't the alarm. It was the elevator. A dull clunk echoed through the underground corridor, too heavy, too wrong. Sophia froze. Emma stirred in her arms, soft breath against her neck. Then came the hum, low, steady, crawling into the walls. Security lights bled red. Outside the nursery, footsteps moved fast but silent. Jackson's voice crackled softly through the intercom, controlled, calm, the way a blade is calm before it cuts. "They're here. Marcus sent his enforcers." Sophia gripped the crib rail with one hand and Emma with the other. She could hear them now. Boots on tile. Men who thought they owned her. Men who'd sold her future to the highest bidder. The door hissed open. Jackson stepped inside wearing black tactical gear. No tie. No mask of civility. Just precision. He slipped a comm-piece into his ear and gave a small nod to Elena, who passed behind him carrying a duffel bag that clinked softly like metal teeth. "Move fast," Jackson said. Not to her, to the room. But Sophia wasn't a ghost in this story anymore. "How did they find us?" "Doesn't matter," he said. His gaze met hers briefly, steady as stone. "What matters is they don't leave with you." A sharp, high-pitched chirp cut through the building. The lights went white, then dimmed. Vent covers slid open along the ceiling. A faint mist began to bleed down like fog. Sophia's pulse jumped. "What is that?" Jackson's voice was almost bored. "Fumigation protocol." It wasn't gas that burned. It was gas that silenced. Below, through the cameras she could see flickering in the hall, men began to sway like drunk shadows, their boots losing rhythm. One stumbled into a wall. Another reached for his throat like the air had turned to smoke. They'd never even make it to the door. Jackson moved with quiet efficiency. 2 words in his comm, a gesture to Elena, a glance to the security feeds. This was his world, and he was at home in it. But there was no gloating. Just focus. War without noise. Sophia shifted Emma higher against her chest. What happens if they get through? He didn't lie. Then I stop them. She searched for a tremor in his voice. There wasn't one. Only steel wrapped in cedar and restraint. Something in her, the part that had been running, trembling, always waiting, went still. Trust didn't bloom, but something cracked enough for it to breathe. Minutes stretched thin. Enforcers dropped one by one on the cameras like puppets with cut strings. The mist lingered for a heartbeat longer, then vanished into the vents. Clean, silent, over. Jackson lowered his weapon. It's done. Sophia stared at the monitors. That fast? That easy. It wasn't ease, it was control. Ruthless, cold control. And God help her. It made her feel safer than she'd ever admit. He approached, slow enough for her to step back if she wanted to. She didn't. Emma shifted in her arms, the soft scent of milk and warmth clinging to her skin. You don't have to be afraid, Jackson said quietly. She almost laughed. I've been afraid my whole life. He didn't flinch. Then let me be the one thing that scares them more. The space between them tightened. His eyes weren't soft. They burned with something sharp and dangerous, but it wasn't aimed at her. For the first time she saw not just a wolf, but a man who'd been at war too long to stop. The alarms dimmed. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the kind that comes after a kill. Sophia swallowed hard. Why me, Jackson? Why this much trouble for someone you don't even know? He stared at Emma, not her. Because I do know. What does that mean? His jaw worked, like he wanted to lie, but couldn't. Not tonight. He turned away. She caught the barest flicker of something in his eyes before he closed the door behind him. A shadow of grief with teeth. The kind that doesn't fade with time. It just burrows deeper. Sophia lowered Emma back into the crib. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. The mist was gone. The men outside were unconscious, and yet the storm had only just touched the door. On the nightstand, the black leather notebook sat where Emma had dropped it. She picked it up, flipping through the blank pages. Nothing. But it smelled like him. Like rain. Like woods after dark. She pressed her thumb to the edge. Something inside whispered, "This isn't chance. This is a plan." She looked toward the hallway where Jackson had disappeared, his shadow still hanging in the doorway. And for the first time since she ran, she wasn't sure who was hunting who. Knox Patterson had the kind of smile that belonged in glossy magazines and nightmares. It was slow, polished, a performance. Sophia stood under the Riverside Hotel's awning, rain needling the pavement, Emma tucked against her chest. Jackson's voice pulsed through the tiny earpiece beneath her hair. "Stay where I can see you. Keep your hands free." She wasn't stupid. Meeting Knox was a risk, but running had never worked. And if the past few days had taught her anything, it was that monsters preferred when you looked afraid. She lifted her chin instead. Inside, the hotel lobby smelled of leather and espresso. Too clean, too staged. Knox waited at a corner table with a drink he hadn't touched. His suit was gray, but not like Jackson's. This was imitation power. Smooth edges, hollow center. "Sophia Bennett," he greeted, rising like a man greeting an investment, not a person. "Or do you go by something else now?" She kept walking. She didn't shake his hand. "You don't look like someone on the run," he said, settling back into his chair. "But then again, Marcus never told me how pretty you were, or how stubborn." Her skin prickled. "Where's Victoria?" Knox chuckled, swirling his untouched drink. "Right to business. I like that. She doesn't need to be here. She's already watching." Sophia scanned the room. No cameras. Not obvious ones anyway. She didn't need to see them to know they were there. Knox had the kind of confidence that came from people who thought they couldn't lose. "Marcus wants you back," he said softly. "But Victoria, she has other plans. Bigger ones. I'm not for sale." He leaned forward. "Everything's for sale. Especially what's already been bought." Her pulse slammed once, sharp and fast. She shifted Emma higher on her hip. The baby's breath was warm against her neck. If Knox even twitched wrong, she'd scream, claw, burn the building down if she had to. Knox tilted his head. "You think Jackson can protect you forever? He's playing at something bigger than you, than Marcus. Victoria doesn't fight wars she can't win." Jackson's voice cut softly through the calm. "Keep him talking." Sophia let a slow breath slide through her teeth. Victoria's not invincible. No one is. Knox's grin sharpened. "You think this is about invincibility? It's about ownership. Jackson's trying to build something. Some noble little rescue network. Victoria's dismantling it piece by piece. You're just a string to pull." Something inside her went cold. Not because he was lying. Because he wasn't. "You don't even understand why Emma matters, do you?" Knox asked, voice lowering to a purr. "She's not just some baby you picked up out of kindness." Sophia felt her stomach twist. "Don't say her name." He leaned closer, voice a whisper. "Emma Cross." Her blood iced. He'd said it like he knew something she didn't. Like it was already written. Tick-tock, little Omega. Denver was a trap. Portland was a delay. "But you," he pointed one lazy finger at her, "you are the fuse." Jackson's voice snapped through the line, harder this time. "Now, panic button. Left cuff." Knox's eyes flicked toward her wrist at the same time. He smiled wider. "She told you how to wear it. Cute." Sophia didn't think. She moved. Her thumb hit the tiny gold button sewn into the cuff of her jacket. The air cracked. Somewhere beneath the lobby, a low-frequency pulse shuddered the floor. Knox's glass shattered. Doors burst open. Jackson came through first, not in a suit this time. All black. Tactical. His eyes cut through the room like light through water. Behind him, Vincent and 3 security agents spread wide, moving with a precision that made the room feel too small. Knox only laughed. "Of course." "The exterminator shows up right on time." Smoke billowed near the exits, a flash grenade's hiss filling the air. Guests screamed. The lobby became a blur of movement, shadows, choking haze. Jackson's hand caught Sophia's wrist, solid and unyielding, pulling her toward the service exit. Knox didn't fight. He just turned his head as the gas curled around his chair and said something that split the air like a blade. "Too late, Cross. She's already there." Elena's voice, usually warm and steady, crackled through Jackson's comm with jagged panic. "Jackson. Armed men in the lower levels. They've breached the sanctuary." The line went dead. Sophia's heart lurched to her throat. Jackson's grip tightened. In that split second she saw the flicker in his eyes. Not panic. Rage. Cold and absolute. Knox's laugh echoed through the smoke behind them. It was the sound of someone who didn't need to win here to win at all. Outside, the rain slammed down like the city itself was trying to drown the night. Jackson pulled Sophia into the SUV as Vincent barked orders into his radio. The door slammed shut, and for the first time Sophia saw Jackson's hands shaking. Not from fear, but from the storm he was already unleashing in his head. "Buckle up," he muttered. The tires shrieked against the wet road as they sped back into the night. And for the first time, Sophia understood. She wasn't running anymore. She was in the middle of a war. Rain lashed the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists. Jackson's jaw was stone as the SUV cut through the night, the city blurring into streaks of gray and steel. Beside him, Sophia clutched Emma so tightly, the baby's small heartbeat pulsed against her own. The radio in the front crackled with Vincent's voice, clipped and cold. North entrance breached. Elena's holding level 2. We've got civilians in the nursery wing. Multiple armed, 3, maybe 4 teams. Jackson didn't look at her. Stay down. I'm not hiding, she shot back, even though her hands were shaking. This isn't a debate, Sophia. His voice was sharper than the rain, but under the steel was something rawer, fear that had nothing to do with himself. He hit the security pad on the dash. Blueprints flared across the onboard screen. The sanctuary, once a safe place, now a battlefield. Vincent's voice came again. We need you here, boss. 2 minutes, Jackson growled. The car jerked to a stop in the underground lot. He stepped out first, pulling a gun from the holster at his hip with the casual ease of a man who'd done this too many times. He didn't have to tell her to stay. She was already opening the door. Sophia! His warning was sharp. I'm not letting them take her. Her voice didn't shake this time. Not Emma. Not me. He stared at her for a heartbeat, rain dripping from his lashes. Then, he nodded once, a warrior acknowledging another. Inside, the sanctuary was unrecognizable. The soft white lights were gone, replaced by flashing amber. Hallways that once smelled like safety now reeked of smoke and fear. Women clutched their children, barricading doorways with overturned tables, storage crates, anything they could drag. Elena stood at the command console, hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. They came through the service tunnel, took out the sensors. Someone on the outside had intel. Jackson didn't even glance at the map. Where? North wing, trying to cut through to the nursery. His hand tightened on the gun. Not happening. Sophia stood beside Elena, Emma pressed against her chest. She wasn't supposed to be here. But she couldn't leave. Not again. She watched Jackson disappear down the hallway like a shadow with a heartbeat. The first gunfire echoed a second later, short, controlled bursts. Jackson never wasted bullets. Sophia's stomach knotted, but she didn't look away. If she was going to live this story, she'd see every inch of it. Elena touched her arm. Get to the safe room. No. Elena's eyes softened. Not pity, understanding. Then stay close. Down the hall, the sounds of the fight rolled like thunder. Jackson moved like water through fire, silent, fast, deadly. 2 men went down before they even saw him. The third got close. Too close. Jackson slammed him into the wall, the thud cracking the air like a bone breaking. He didn't hesitate. Sophia's breath came too fast, too shallow. Her world had always been survival. But watching him, watching someone fight not to claim her, but to protect everything built around her, did something brutal to her chest. Minutes stretched like hours. Then a siren wailed low, an emergency signal. Vincent burst through the stairwell, blood on his sleeve. They're pushing toward the med wing. Not anymore, Jackson said. He moved, and when Jackson moved, rooms followed. Sophia followed too. The hallway opened into the nursery wing. The attackers wore Thornwood's insignia. Wolves pretending to be men. One of them reached for the door, and Sophia felt something in her spine snap. She didn't think. She stepped forward. Don't, she hissed. The man turned, smirked, like he saw nothing but a trembling girl holding a baby. Then Jackson appeared behind him like the end of the world. The fight ended fast. 1 heartbeat, 2 bodies down. The last man bolted, only to meet Vincent's gun at the corner. Silence filled the hallway. Heavy, breathing silence. The sanctuary was bruised but breathing. Sophia didn't realize she was crying until the tears reached her lips. Not out of fear, out of something sharper. She'd been running for so long, she'd forgotten what standing her ground felt like. Jackson approached slowly, blood streaked across his forearm. His eyes swept over her and Emma. Not a word, just a look that said everything. You're safe. Elena rushed past them toward the control panel. "We have casualties," she called, "but it's contained." A soft chime rang from the med wing. Dr. Hayes emerged with a tablet, pale and shaken. "I ran the test again," she whispered. "Sophia. The baby." Sophia felt the world tilt. "She's not just some abandoned child," Dr. Hayes said carefully, handing the tablet to Jackson. "Emma is Riley Cross's daughter." His sister's name dropped like a stone into the silence. Jackson stared at the screen. His hands, the same hands that had just taken lives, trembled around the edges. He looked at Emma like he was seeing a ghost. Like a missing piece had just been shoved back into place. Sophia clutched the baby tighter, heart pounding. She'd saved Emma because no one else would. She hadn't known she was saving a piece of him, too. The building was still humming with the aftermath of war, but in the middle of that smoke and fear, something shifted between them. Something bigger than fate. And just as the silence settled, Vincent's voice sliced through it. "Boss, we've got a problem." He handed Jackson a blinking screen. A formal notice, council summons, custody claim, Emma Bennett, claimant, Marcus Thornwood. Jackson's jaw set like stone. "Over my dead body." Sophia didn't need her gift to know he meant every word. The chamber didn't smell like justice. It smelled like glass, steel, and cold perfume. Rows of officials sat behind sleek black tables, each one wearing neutrality like armor. Cameras lined the back wall. This wasn't a hearing. It was a stage. Sophia stood just behind Jackson, Emma bundled in her arms beneath a soft gray blanket. She could feel the council's gaze like a spotlight on her skin. They didn't look at her like a person. They looked at her like a problem to be solved. And at the center of it all, sitting like she owned the air itself, was Victoria Ravencroft. Perfect posture, blood-red lips, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't need to speak to make the room lean in her direction. "Alpha Jackson Cross," the presiding counselor began, voice smooth and distant. "You stand accused of harboring a fugitive Omega, illegally interfering with pack transfer laws, and concealing a child belonging to the Thornwood pack." Jackson's voice didn't tremble. "I stand accused of saving lives." That murmur running through the chamber? It wasn't approval. It was entertainment. These people loved a good show. Victoria rose from her seat like a queen walking through a ruined kingdom. "With all due respect, Council," she purred, "this isn't about saving lives. This is about an unstable Omega who stole a child. Marcus Thornwood is grieving. His mate is missing. His daughter, she's not his daughter," Jackson cut in. The room tightened. Victoria tilted her head with practiced sweetness. "Then prove it." Dr. Hayes was already waiting by the stand. The tablet glowed softly in her hands as she approached the council table. Jackson nodded once. She projected the DNA report on the transparent panel for the entire room to see. Riley Cross, Emma Cross. 98% match. The words hung in the air like gunfire. For the first time, Victoria's expression flickered. Just a hairline crack. But it was there. Sophia saw it. Everyone did. "She's his niece," Dr. Hayes said softly. "Riley's child. The child Marcus helped sell." Gasps rippled through the chamber. The presiding counselor's brow furrowed. "That's a serious accusation." Sophia took one step forward, pulse thundering in her ears. "It's not an accusation. It's the truth." The counselor's eyes narrowed. "And you would know how?" Her throat was dry, but her voice didn't shake. "Because I can hear lies." That set the room on fire. A dozen voices whispered. Someone laughed nervously. One council member muttered, "Truth-sensing Omega." Sophia's ability had always been her burden. Today, it was her blade. She looked at Marcus, standing at the far end of the room, hiding behind expensive suits and lawyers. His jaw clenched. His pulse ticked at his throat. She spoke softly, almost kindly. "Tell them what you did to Riley." He flinched. The counselor frowned. "Alpha Thornwood, would you like to respond?" Marcus swallowed, stepping forward. "I didn't kill her." "Lie." The sound of it wasn't noise. It was vibration. The world tightened around it. "You sold her," Sophia whispered. His face flushed red. "No." Another lie. The air thickened with it. "She was pregnant," Sophia said louder. "She ran from you, and when you couldn't control her, you gave her location to the traffickers." Marcus stumbled over his next words, his heartbeat screaming what his mouth refused to. The council could feel it, even if they didn't have her gift. Truth had a way of cutting the air. Victoria stepped in then, like a viper slithering between blows. "This is emotional theater. We don't convict on sentiment." Jackson finally moved. Slow, controlled, a predator choosing the moment. He turned toward the counselors, voice low. "Victoria sold information on pregnant Omegas to traffickers for years. We've been building the case. Her partner in the network confessed 2 nights ago." Vincent entered through the side door like punctuation, sliding a folder onto the council table. Photos, names, wire transfers. Her empire laid bare under fluorescent lights. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was the sound of power shifting. Victoria didn't smile this time. She straightened her coat, her mask cracking at the edges. The counselor leaned forward. "We'll review this evidence." "You'll feel it," Jackson said, "because it's real." Sophia's chest ached with how still Emma was in her arms. For the first time in months, she wasn't clutching her baby to run. She was clutching her to stand. The council's final decision wasn't swift, but it was decisive. The trafficking charges against Victoria were referred for trial. Marcus Thornwood was arrested on suspicion of aiding Riley Cross's death, and Emma's custody, legal, official, untouchable, was awarded to Jackson Cross. When the gavel hit the table, Sophia exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. Outside the chamber, rain misted the steps. Jackson stood with one hand on the railing, looking down at the street. The storm inside him was quieter now, but not gone. "She's safe," Sophia said softly. He nodded, jaw tight. "For now." She knew that tone. It wasn't over. Vincent came up the steps, handing Jackson a folder. "You need to see this." Jackson flipped it open. His expression went from ice to thunder in a breath. "Victoria's pulling strings already." Vincent's voice was low. "Federal charges. FBI's involved. They're freezing your accounts." Sophia's stomach twisted. "What?" Victoria's laughter echoed from the lobby below, like perfume and poison. She didn't need the council. She had other ways to fight. Jackson's hand tightened around the folder. "She wants war," he muttered. "Fine." The storm hadn't ended. It had only changed shape. The sanctuary was quiet again, but it was the wrong kind of quiet. Heavy, waiting. The kind that settles after a storm, but before the next one hits. Jackson stood in the control room, shoulders rigid, eyes on the scrolling line of frozen account notifications flashing across the monitors, one after another. His empire wasn't built on lies, but it was built on resources, and Victoria had just turned those to dust. Sophia lingered in the doorway, barefoot, Emma balanced on her hip. She watched him in silence for a long time. This was the man who could shut down a pack in 30 seconds, who could bring entire rooms to heel with a single look. But now he was standing too still, like someone trying not to break the world with one wrong move. "You've been standing there for an hour," she said quietly, his head lifted, just a fraction. "Didn't hear you." "Liar." It wasn't accusation. It was a fact that hummed between them. His jaw flexed. "I can fix this." Sophia stepped closer. "Or you can admit it's not just yours to fix." That made him turn. His eyes, those steady storm-gray eyes, met hers, and she saw it clearly then. Control wasn't his armor. It was his crutch. He'd spent so long building walls around everyone he loved that the idea of anyone else carrying the weight terrified him. "This is my mess," he said. "No," she countered softly. "It's our war." The word hung in the air. Our. It wasn't a plea. It was a line in the ground. Emma made a soft cooing sound, unaware she was in the middle of a hurricane made of two people trying to love without losing themselves. For the first time in weeks, Jackson exhaled, not the clipped, measured kind. A real breath. His voice came low. "If they take you, if they take her, they won't," Sophia cut in, "because you're not the only one fighting anymore." He stared at her, then at Emma, small hand gripping the edge of his shirt, and something inside him finally cracked. He didn't touch her. He didn't have to. The air between them shifted. That night, the sanctuary gathered around the long table in the common hall. Thanksgiving dinner. It wasn't planned. It was instinct. The women cooked what they could scrape together from the pantry: mashed potatoes, soup, 2 pies, and bread that smelled like someone's grandmother's kitchen. Children's laughter echoed against the walls that had seen too much darkness. For a moment, it wasn't a sanctuary. It was home. Sophia sat at the end of the table, Emma in her lap. Elena clinked a glass with a fork. "We've survived worse storms," she said, raising her cup. "And we'll survive this one, too." Vincent lifted his glass. "To making Victoria wish she'd stayed in hell." Laughter rolled through the room, not because the words were funny, but because everyone in it needed to laugh. Jackson sat beside Sophia, sleeves rolled up, the untouchable alpha looking almost human. One of the children smeared mashed potatoes on his arm. He didn't snap. He didn't scowl. He just wiped it off with a napkin and shook his head like a man remembering what warmth felt like. Sophia hadn't realized how much her body had lived in a state of flinch. Tonight, it didn't. Emma babbled suddenly, banging her tiny hand on the table. Then, in a clear, bright voice, she said it. "Mama, Dada." The room went silent. Not the bad kind, the kind where hearts forget how to beat for 1 second. Jackson froze. Slowly, as if the moment might shatter if he moved too fast, he looked at her. Their eyes locked. No walls. No cages. Just 2 broken people standing in the same storm. Sophia's throat burned. She kissed Emma's forehead. "Yeah, baby, we're right here." Hours later, long after the laughter faded and the children were tucked into rooms that finally felt safe, Sophia sat in the quiet of the nursery, watching Emma sleep. Rain whispered against the windows like a lullaby. Jackson leaned against the doorway, hands in his pockets. "She likes it here." "She feels safe here," Sophia corrected. He nodded slowly. "You do too." She didn't deny it, but safety was complicated. So was love. "You can't keep trying to carry this alone, Jackson," she said softly. "I'm not a piece on your chessboard." "I know," he answered, and this time she heard truth in his voice. He stepped forward, not like a man claiming, but like someone willing to stand next to her instead of in front. That difference was everything, but peace never came without a warning. Her laptop screen blinked to life from the corner of the room. A message notification. No sender, no signature, just a single sentence. "She's more valuable than you think, and I always collect what's mine." Sophia's blood went cold. She turned the screen toward him. "Victoria." "Of course." Jackson's jaw clenched. "She's moving faster." Sophia whispered what he was already thinking. "She's coming for Emma." The warmth of the Thanksgiving table evaporated like breath in winter. The war wasn't knocking on their door anymore. It was already inside the walls. And this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about not letting anyone take what they'd finally begun to build. Morning came gray and sharp. Rain smeared the windows of Jackson's office, dripping in steady lines like a clock counting down. He leaned against the edge of his desk, jaw set, hands braced on the surface like he was holding the world in place through sheer will. Sophia stood across from him, barefoot, her hair still damp. Emma slept in Elena's arms down the hall. The sanctuary smelled faintly of coffee and gun oil, warmth and war living in the same air. He broke the silence first. "We can't keep playing defense." "We're not," she said quietly. "We're drawing a line." His brow arched. "You think a line will stop Victoria?" "No," she admitted, "but it'll stop you from fighting everyone alone." That made him look up. Really look. Sophia walked toward him slowly, the way you approach something wild. Not to tame it, but to prove you're not afraid. She took the pen from his hand and slid a thin sheet of paper across the desk. He glanced down. "What's this?" "Our rules," she said. "A contract." He stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. "You're serious?" "As a heartbeat." She tapped the top line. "I'm not your soldier. I don't take orders, Jackson. We fight together or we don't fight at all. You don't cage me in the name of protection. I don't disappear when things get hard. This time, we build something that doesn't break just because the world does." His throat worked, but no words came. This wasn't what he was used to. Women didn't draw boundaries with alphas like him. They didn't hand him terms. But Sophia Bennett was not most women. He picked up the pen. By noon, Agent Morrison arrived. His badge didn't shine the way it should have. Nothing in his face looked clean. But his voice was even, and for now, that was enough. "They froze your accounts, Jackson." "But I know what Victoria's doing," Morrison said, pulling out a file thick with red tabs. "She's been buying silence for years. Judges, counsel aides, federal liaisons. But she made a mistake this time. She left a trail." Jackson folded his arms. "And you're here because I don't like people who think they're gods." Morrison's eyes flicked to Sophia. "I can help you, but I need access to your network. All of it." Sophia watched Jackson carefully. She saw the hesitation before he even spoke. "That's not happening." Morrison didn't blink. "Then she wins." Sophia stepped between them, not as a shield, but as the only person in the room who could keep them from tearing it apart. "What if I help?" she asked. Morrison tilted his head. "You?" "My ability," she said. "I can help you find the cracks in her armor. The lies she's hiding behind." Jackson's voice was a low growl. "No. Jackson. She'll paint a target on your back. She already has." The silence stretched thin and dangerous between them. Morrison finally slid a card across the desk. "If you change your mind, call me. But don't wait too long. Victoria's already moving." He left without looking back. His footsteps echoed down the hall like a metronome ticking towards something inevitable. Later, they stood in the war room, once a conference space, now covered in maps, red string, photographs, and timelines. The name Victoria Ravencroft glared from the center like a wound. Sophia traced one of the lines with her finger. "She doesn't want money. She wants control." "She always did," Jackson muttered. He hadn't sat down once. Alphas didn't sit when their world was burning. "Then we fight her with something she doesn't understand." His gaze lifted. "What's that?" "Us," Sophia said simply. "Not just you. Not just me. All of us. The women she thought were too broken to stand." The way he looked at her then wasn't possessive. It was quiet. Fierce. Something almost reverent beneath the weight of his exhaustion. Then Vincent rushed in, tablet in hand, face carved with bad news. "We've got something," he said. "You need to see this." He handed the device to Sophia. Her name glowed on the screen. Sophia Bennett, juvenile record released. A headline was already spreading through the council channels. Her ability, her testimony at 13, the case where she'd pointed at a man and said, "He's lying," and a jury had listened. Jackson stiffened. She's digging up your past. She's going to make me look unreliable, Sophia whispered, like a weapon that can't be trusted. Jackson's fist clenched around the edge of the table hard enough for the wood to creak. She's trying to turn you into the problem. She's not wrong, Sophia said softly. I am her problem. Their eyes met across the chaos of the war room. Whatever line they'd drawn earlier wasn't just ink on paper. It was carved into the ground now. Victoria wanted war? They'd give her something she couldn't bury. Then the lights flickered. A coded alert flashed across the screens. Tribunal extradition order. Emma Bennett, 48 hours. Sophia's stomach went cold. No. Vincent's voice was grim. They're siding with Marcus. International PAC law overrides council jurisdiction. Jackson's voice was quiet. Too quiet. They want to take my niece. They want to take my daughter, Sophia corrected, fire under her breath. The air between them thickened. No running now. No hiding. This was the fight Victoria wanted. Jackson picked up the contract from the desk. He folded it carefully and slid it into his jacket like armor. Then he looked at her. Not as a savior. As a partner. She just made her last move, he said. Sophia stared at the flashing alert, feeling the burn of every moment she'd ever spent being cornered. Not this time. This time, they'd corner her back. Las Vegas never slept, but the Strip was quieter here, beyond the casinos, past the glitter, inside a building of glass and silence, where power wore perfume instead of blood. The International Werewolf Tribunal didn't look like a court. It looked like a cathedral built by billionaires and monsters who'd learned to smile. Sophia stood at the entrance, fingers curled around Emma's blanket. Jackson stood beside her in a dark suit that hid the bruises on his knuckles. Behind them came Elena, Vincent, Dr. Hayes, their small army made of people the world had thrown away. Inside, the air was marble and menace. Victoria waited near the dais, dressed in white this time, like innocence had a wardrobe. She didn't look at Sophia. She looked through her. Welcome to judgment, she said sweetly. Do try to behave. The presiding elder raised a hand. Let it be on record that Alpha Jackson Cross stands accused of violating international PAC law, harboring fugitives, trafficking in influence, and withholding a child of Thornwood descent. Sophia's pulse slammed once. Jackson didn't blink. That child isn't Thornwood. She's family. Victoria smiled. So sentimental. The first 2 hours were noise. Lawyers, witnesses, documents thick with lies. Sophia barely heard them. Every lie left a taste of iron in her mouth. Every word Marcus's counsel uttered scraped against her skin like broken glass. Then the elder turned to her. Ms. Bennett, you claim special insight into truth. Will you testify? The room tilted. Cameras blinked red. Victoria's mouth curved. By all means, she murmured. Show them your little trick. Sophia stepped into the center of the floor. Her heart hammered, but her voice came out steady. Ask her anything you want. Victoria's lawyer began the ritual questions, his voice oily. Ms. Ravencroft, did you ever engage in human or omega trafficking? No, Victoria said easily. The word hit Sophia like static, bright, wrong, vibrating. Lie! Gasps rippled. The elder frowned. Proceed. Did you order the abduction of Riley Cross? I had no reason to. Lie? Victoria's fingers twitched. The elder leaned forward. How do you know? Sophia lifted her chin. Because truth and lies don't sound the same. Not to me. Her lies sound like thunder. Victoria's composure cracked, just slightly. Parlor tricks. Then swear again, Sophia said quietly. Look at me this time. Victoria did, and for the first time Sophia saw it. Fear. Small, sharp, hiding behind arrogance. You sold Riley to the highest bidder, Sophia said. And when she tried to escape, You made Marcus finish the job. Enough! Victoria's voice tore through the hall. Her control slipped. The mask shattered. You think they'll believe you, a nobody Omega who can't tell love from instinct? Jackson rose. She told me the truth when no one else dared. Silence fell like snowfall. Then the elder's gavel struck once. That's enough. The tribunal has heard more truth in 5 minutes than in 5 years. The council whispered among themselves. Papers shifted. Outside, a storm rolled across the desert like applause from the gods. The elder turned back. The evidence stands. Victoria Ravencroft is stripped of pack status and exiled from all territories. The child, Emma Cross, remains under the guardianship of Sophia Bennett and Alpha Jackson Cross. It was done. The words felt unreal, weightless, but they were carved in law now. Victoria lunged forward, fury twisting her perfect face. You think exile will stop me? Security moved, but Sophia didn't. You don't stop storms, she said softly. You outlast them. As Victoria was dragged away, she hissed one last sentence. You've no idea what that child will become. Sophia held Emma tighter. Maybe not, but she'll have a choice. Outside the tribunal, dusk burned the horizon gold. The team stepped into the open air, exhaustion and relief braided together. Jackson reached for Sophia's hand, not to claim it, but to steady his own. You were extraordinary, he said. She smiled faintly. You mean terrifying? That too. They walked past the waiting press, the flashing lights, the shouting questions. None of it mattered. The war was over. For the first time, the future wasn't running away from them. It was waiting. At the steps, the elder approached, robes whispering like paper. Ms. Bennett, he said, offering a formal nod. The tribunal could use a truth seeker, someone who remembers what honesty costs. Sophia looked at Jackson, then at Emma sleeping against her shoulder. I'll consider it, she said, but only if my family comes with me. The elder smiled. Wise answer. They stepped into the car as the first lights of the city flickered to life. Vegas glittered below, reckless and alive. Jackson glanced at her. So what now? Sophia looked out the window at the chaos and beauty she'd learned to survive. Now, she whispered, we build something worth protecting. And somewhere far behind them, in a city that had once been a trap, the last echo of Victoria's empire finally fell silent. 3 years later, the sanctuary didn't smell like fear anymore. It smelled like bread baking in the kitchen, warm spices drifting through the air, laughter weaving through the halls. Children ran down the corridors barefoot, their small voices echoing against walls that once held nothing but silence. Sophia stood on the balcony overlooking the main atrium, a place that had once been a fortress. Now it was alive, a home. Where war once lingered in every corner, sunlight poured through skylights, touching everything it once couldn't. Below, the gala was in full bloom. Long tables lined with candles. Flowers curled like soft whispers along the walls. Faces she recognized, women who'd once been broken, standing taller now. Mothers, warriors, survivors. They weren't guests. They were family. Emma darted through the crowd in a white dress with tiny gold buttons, her laugh carrying like bells. She was 4 now, fast and fearless, curls bouncing as she ran straight toward Jackson, who bent down in his black suit, catching her mid-air like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Too fast, he teased, spinning her once. You'll break the sound barrier. Can't catch me, she giggled, wriggling out of his arms. He let her go, pretending to stumble, and she shrieked with delight. Sophia watched them with a smile that came easy now. No cages, no walls, just love. Wild, imperfect, real. Later that night, the lights dimmed to a warm gold. Elena raised a glass near the front of the hall. Her hair was streaked with silver now, but her voice carried the same quiet power. To the ones we lost, she began, soft but sure. And to the ones who lived. To the women who built this place brick by brick. Not from money, but from pain they refused to let define them. The room fell silent. Even the youngest children seemed to understand. To family, Vincent added, his hand resting lightly on Dr. Hayes' shoulder. The kind you choose. A soft chorus of to family rippled through the room. Glasses touched, eyes shined. And for the first time in her life, Sophia didn't feel like an intruder in someone else's story. She was the story. Jackson found her in the crowd. He didn't have to search long. Their eyes always found each other now. He crossed the floor, his jacket slung over one shoulder, a faint smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Still watching from the sidelines? He asked. Old habit, she said. He shook his head. You don't live on the edges anymore, Sophia? She leaned into him as his hand settled against the small of her back. Steady, grounding. No, she said softly. I don't. Outside, the night air was cool. The city skyline glittered beyond the river like scattered stars. Emma sat on the steps with a group of children, passing around a toy dragon that blinked red eyes. She'd inherited Sophia's gift, not as a burden, but as something soft, something she was learning to shape. She could tell when the other kids were scared before they said a word. She had Jackson's fierce streak too, the kind that came out whenever someone tried to push too hard. Sophia rested her hand on her belly, the soft swell of new life growing there. Jackson crouched down next to Emma, helping her fix the dragon's wing. The picture was so ordinary, it almost hurt. After everything, they'd found ordinary, and made it their own. Later, when the gala quieted and the last lights flickered low, they sat on the edge of their bed in the penthouse, above the sanctuary. No bodyguards, no alarms, just the hum of the city below. Emma had fallen asleep between them, her small hand curled against Sophia's. Jackson reached over and brushed a stray curl from her forehead, his touch uncharacteristically gentle. She's going to be a storm, he said softly. She already is, Sophia answered. They sat in the quiet for a long time, listening to their daughter breathe. The same daughter who'd once been a secret, a spark, a war. Now she was home. Sophia turned her head toward him. Do you ever think about how close we came to losing all of this? Every day, Jackson admitted. His voice wasn't heavy anymore. It was full. But then I look at her, at you, and I stop. She let out a slow breath. Are we safe now? His hand found hers beneath the blankets. No hesitation. We're together. That's all the safety I need. Emma stirred in her sleep. Her voice was small, warm, and sleepy. Mama, Dada, forever and always. The words hung in the room like a promise written in air. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Sophia pressed a kiss to Emma's forehead. She looked at Jackson, the man who had once been a storm, and now was her calm. And for the first time in a life spent running, she believed it. Forever wasn't a fairy tale. It was a choice. One they made every day. Outside, the rain had finally stopped.